Hey everyone, this is Perry with the EV Lab, and I wanted to talk about pitch sequencing today and kind of find out if Zack Wheeler is our first black belt. Um, there's a story that I wanted to share with his pitching coach, Caleb Cotham. He reached out to me one day, kind of out of the blue, and said, "Hey, Derek Johnson, I was assistant with him last year. He was the assistant under Derek. Derek was the pitching coach for the Reds. He was the assistant pitching coach. And he said, Derek told me that I needed to call you now that I got the job with Phillies to fill in some blanks on pitch sequencing. So we talked for a long time, and I told him that while Derek Johnson himself is probably a black belt, and Brent Strom is probably a black belt, and there's 4 or 5 other pitching coaches in Major League Baseball that may be close, I haven't yet seen any black belt pitchers. I've seen some, really low level belts up to brown belt, but I just have not seen any consistent black belt outings. And he said, well, definitely I'll be the first. And we laughed a little bit. Skip ahead to them qualifying for the playoffs. And I texted him and said, that was a really, really cool brown belt effort. And I thought, it'll be maybe a couple of weeks, probably after the season, he'll get back to me. Hopefully he'll think it's funny. And so instead, he writes back to me, black belt. And he must have still had champagne in his hair because it was immediately after the game. And my response to him was, we'll see. And that was it. Just funny. And then they go into the World Series. Great year. But it ended on what I would say was some effective velocity inefficient sequences. Skip ahead now to now. Now, Zack Wheeler has made some major strides, and so has Ranger Suarez and Sanchez. There's some guys that are really close to breaking that barrier. In fact, the last couple of outings, I would say there was definitely Zack Wheeler was at that black belt level. There's a lot that goes into that, and I want to talk about that a little bit. Baseball is 100% about timing. 100%. The confrontation between pitcher and hitter is 100% timing. And the way that pitchers control timing is through deception. That's it. That's their thing. And deception is a lot of factors. It's hiding the ball physically where they can't see it right away. It's short arming the ball. It's getting a long ways off the pitching rubber when you let go of it through extension. There's all kinds of different things. There's movement, which movement is very deceptive because it looks like it's going to go one way and it ends up going another way. The rise effect for high-speed fastballs is very deceptive because it looks like it's going to be at one height and sink, and it doesn't sink, at least not as early as we thought as a hitter, and that adds effective velocity to that pitch. So it's one of those things where everything literally either adds to or takes away from deception when it comes to pitching. And so sequencing is one of those things that if you ask the average analytic person, they're going to tell you that it's mostly art rather than science or some kind of blend therein. Driveline did a huge article on effective velocity and called it, said that it wasn't very effective, but that sequencing was still way more art than it was science. So that's kind of the synopsis around Major League Baseball and the analytic world. But from my perspective, everything in it is measurable. Every part of it is virtually 100% scientific, meaning how deceptive is a tunnel? Well, we can measure. How long was it in the exact same line? Was the fastball and the slider in the same tunnel? We'll take a look at that in a minute with Zack Wheeler. How long was that? And we can measure that. We can measure what the speed differential is. For example, if a pitcher throws 95, but he throws it down and away, that 95 becomes 90. That's the reactionary time. The true speed of the pitch is the flight time based on the hitter's ability to to get to that location. So down and away, they have more time. Up and in, they have less time. So 95 down and away is 90. And if he's throwing an 85-mile-an-hour slider and he throws that middle in to up and in, it's actually 90. So even though there's a big speed differential, according to the radar gun, there is zero speed differential. For example, throwing a fastball away, down and away, and throwing a cutter up and in to a left-handed batter would be literally the same exact pitch. That 95, 94 turns to somewhere around 90, and the slider at 85 or cutter ends up at 90. And so the pitcher doesn't even know it necessarily, but he's throwing the exact same reactionary time all day. So the speed differentials are huge. The other major factor is predictability, because I don't care how good your pitch is. It doesn't matter if you have the greatest pitch that ever existed. Every pitch is hittable when hitters can predict it. Once they realize about the illusions of the rise effect, every pitch is extremely at risk of being hit hard, regardless if it's over 100 miles an hour, if it's got crazy movement. Some of the players with the biggest movement and the biggest spin rates, they still give up a tremendous amount of hard hit balls. And the reason comes down to predictability. And it comes down to whether they're using deception to help them, or using that movement to help them, or not. And because it's very much a double-edged sword movement. So effective velocity is and always has been about one thing, and that's avoiding 100-100 contact. That means the hitter is taking their A swing and they're applying it to the pitch at exactly on time. In other words, the pitch timing is perfect. Their body timing is perfect, meaning all of their body is synced up, all their movements, and everything meets at that one place. And that almost never happens. It's extremely rare. But in the case of effective velocity, we use that term because if everything is at 100%, it's easy to measure off of that. So that's the way that you measure timing. So basically what it means is 100% on time, 100% of the player's maximum, most efficient swing mechanics, most powerful, most consistent. The way I would define it is, because a lot of people think that means that they're swinging at 100% effort level, and that's not what that means at all. A player takes their swing and they're at 100% of the swing speed that they can control 100%. So that's a lot of hundreds floating around. But basically what we're trying to say is that there is a perfect timing. I mean, this picture you can see fully extended off the backside. We can't really see that. He's locked out. He's got the center of the ball on the center of the bat. It doesn't get a whole lot better than this picture. I haven't found that many pictures like this one over time, but this one's brilliant because it's literally capturing perfect contact. But that perfect contact almost never happens. It's super difficult to create and get all of those things to measure up. We just saw the home run derby, and of course it's easier to do in batting practice, but it's a nightmare to do against someone like Zack Wheeler. So that's what effective velocity is. It's measured off of 100-100. People, I think, have a great misunderstanding about that. So this is a really, really great example, in my opinion. This is a player that is going to hit these two tennis serves, one on top of the other. And what these represent, one of them goes here at a higher velocity. The other one goes along that same tunnel, but then ends up curling off because of the spin, kind of like a slider, and ends up slower and over here someplace. But the reality is that this is beyond this player's ability to react to. In other words, his reactionary ability. He's waiting right here, but he's going to have to run to a place that he has to drop back and get back deeper in order to be able to handle this higher velocity one, or he's got to sprint up and be able to handle this one that's way over here. That's a physical place that he has to run to be able to handle those two different serves. In baseball, the hitter's just standing there in one location. And where he's at in his mind, what he's prepared to hit is not physical. He's not standing over here or standing over there. He's standing in the batter's box in the same spot, but his brain is moving all over the place. And it basically stays in this one very, very predictable area. We're not going to get into that today, but I just wanted to share this idea with you that these two serves are beyond this player's capability. Just like these two pitches are beyond this hitter's capability of reacting to. That's a very important distinction, is that he is in a reactionary mindset. And as long as he's in a reactionary mindset, because of course, this is Jackson Merrill, of course he's a superstar. He can handle 97 up. He's done it lots of times. And he can handle an 83-mile-an-hour curveball. But what I'm saying is that he cannot, while he's in a reactionary mindset, he can't get to both of these at 100%. He can't wait to see what the pitch is, because right here, this pitch is still right on top of each other. That's about a third of the way. And by the time the ball gets to the point where he has to pull the trigger, it's pretty much too late at that moment. So if he's waiting to see the identity of the pitch, he's way too late for the fastball and way too early for that off-speed pitch, because there's about a solid 20 miles an hour between them, because the 83 is about 80 and the 97 is about 105. So there's a very, very large speed differential between those. So that's what it means to be in a reactionary mindset and trying to handle pitches that are at the outer edges of that ability to react to that. Okay, so now I want to get into some actual at-bats, and we're going to take a look at a recent at-bat, or a grouping of at-bats with Zack Wheeler and Jackson Merrill. So first pitch, up and in, 97. It's really about 102, possibly 103 right there. Very late. Doesn't touch it. Gets another pitch back to back, and this, from an EV standpoint, technically this is at risk. It's got a little bit of risk because it's back to back within 6 miles an hour. Why is that a big deal? Because every single day of players' lives, they practice fastball, 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 fastball. And even when they do practice off speed, it's typically off a machine, and they're hitting one after another after another. It's called block training. So when they block train, they get used to seeing a pitch and then adjusting. That might explain why he touches this one, doesn't touch the other one. He's not ready for the other one, but he adjusts after seeing it once or twice. And then he gets, I think, another one, and now he's getting even closer because he starts to get a little bit closer to the barrel, and now he's starting to inch his way towards that until this. So this is a super effective velocity efficient sequence. There is some risk involved because of the back-to-back, but if you understand how to read hitters, and this is the one subjective part about effective velocity, is you have to be able to read where the hitter is at. Because we can predict precisely where their timing is at. There's a default mode that they all kind of live in for most of their at-bats. And then on occasion, they'll jump it up to try to get to a speed. They'll sit on a speed. Some players are really good at it. Some players are terrible at it. Some players never do it. They're always in a reactionary mindset. But by and large, it's predictable where the hitter's attention will be. Not as obvious as the tennis player who's standing there and shows you what they're prepared for. He's standing in the same place, and we're not sure where he's at. So now, a couple things. This is 95. It's not 97 anymore. So he lost a couple miles an hour, and it's in that same location. So this is still 100 EV miles an hour, but this time he hits it, and he actually puts this ball in play. I would say that his exit velocity is probably in that 82 or 3 range. Average major league exit velocity on that location, up and in, inside the strike zone is about 83. It's about 87 in this area. In the middle, it's about 94 or whatever league average fastball is. And then out here, middle away, middle down, it's about 97. And then down and away, it loses a little bit down to about 92. So the exit velocity up and in versus down and away is significantly different. But this hitter somehow manages to get to this. He's not anywhere near on time, but he manages to make contact. So now, next at bat, now he changes it up a little bit, throws a slider, cutter that looks like that same fastball and then runs in. We'll do some overlays in a minute. But now this is in off the plate, and kind of the best he can do there is to pull it. Foul, probably. So this is around 95 or 96 EV miles an hour. So this is lower than the 100 miles an hour that we've been dealing with. And that's one of the reasons why he's a little bit early on that. And then he comes back with a changeup that actually has a pretty good tunnel, I think, off of that cutter. He doesn't chase it, but that's a very good pitch. Then he comes back with another cutter that he does chase. And I want to make a note about this because when Wheeler throws a fastball in, it's going to start on that exact tunnel, but then it's going to make its way into the inside corner. So that's why he looks so foolish on a pitch like this, is because he's planning on that pitch ending up right about there where his barrel's at and not down and in where it ends up being. So this is a risky speed pitch. He's throwing it at the wrong speed, but he's throwing it in an area that's virtually impossible for him to keep fair and to hit hard. Because remember, again, the goal is not to strike everybody out. It's to keep the ball off the barrel, to keep 100%, 100 from happening. This pitch, on the other hand, is very at risk because he's throwing this fastball in the outside part of the plate, and that's in that default speed range where everybody lives. If you notice, his lead arm is completely locked out, in fact, overextended. He still takes a kind of a weak swing at this, but the point is that his barrel is right there where the ball is. So even though he got away with this, and he gets away with it a lot of players get away with throwing fastballs on the outside part of the plate, because when a hitter swings upward at a pitch, even if the pitch is slightly downward, but their swing path looks like this, there's only one point in time. Their timing has to be immaculate in order to make solid contact on pitches like that. Major league hitters swing and miss or foul tip fastballs right down the center of the plate, middle in or middle and middle up, 51% of the time. 51% of the time, that pitch right down central is fouled off or swung and missed. That doesn't count the late pop-ups. It doesn't count any of the good hits either, but it doesn't count anything except for foul tips, swings and misses. That's a crazy number when you think about it. And this is the cause of that. The cause is poor swing planes do not match up to the plane of the pitch. And so therefore, their timing has to be immaculate. That's why strikeouts are at an all-time high. But it also is a very risky thing. Analytics is in love with this outside fastball concept. They throw more up and away fastballs than any other elevated pitch, but it is the same reactionary time precisely as middle. You might as well be throwing it right down the middle. Up and away and middle are identical in reaction time, same as down and in. So whenever you're throwing it in that area or away, you're either losing speed, which puts you right in the heart of that speed range they live in, or you're throwing it at speed. So if it's 96, but it's middle, it's 96. If it's up and away, it's 96. And it becomes 101 or 102 when it gets to this inside portion. Inside, in the strike zone, 96 becomes 101. So that pitch is extremely at risk. He gets away with it. Sometimes. It's like speeding. You get away with it sometimes you don't. So he starts him off next time with curveball down. Is he on time? Not even close. Way ahead of it. In fact, if we saw a side view, I could tell you exactly how early or late he is. But he's missing it not only below, but also off the end. So his bat is moving through the zone, but it's nowhere near where the ball's at in space. Cutter in, not very competitive. And then he goes back to the fastball up. So why doesn't he blast this? This is like the 5th one now he's seen up there. But now he's dead late, maybe almost as late as any of the others. Look at his hands are almost touching his chest. And he barely gets the handle to the ball. And the answer is once pitchers mix correctly, that's one of the elements of this, is having a proper pitch mix, and being able to read hitters is probably the only art that's part of this at all, is the fact that it's a little bit subjective. I'm not sure how subjective it is to read that he's dead late on anything over 100 EV miles an hour, but that's the subjective part that analytics people are talking about. So he's intending this pitch to go up and away, which is one of my contentions, arguments all the time. But he pulls it a little. And so the question is would you rather have your mistakes out here where the barrel is or in here where the handle is? And my answer is always the same. If he's going to bring his barrel in here, that means he's got to almost touch his chest with his hands. The average major leaguer loses 13% bat speed when they adjust their swing by pulling their hands in. They lose 13% of their swing length in order to get to that pitch. And their average exit velocity on fastball in there, again, is 83 miles an hour. There's no damage being done on 83 miles an hour. So why would you mess around with where the exit velocity is about 94 or 5 in this up and away area versus this 83 that's in the up and in area? But that's one of those things that I will judge whether or not someone's a black belt based partially on that. So those were the at-bats. Super frustrating for him. He came back and righted the ship a little bit, but I wanted to show you a few things. One of those is the outing that he had was phenomenal. And one of the things that you'll notice, hopefully, is that a huge percentage of these pitches are outside the strike zone. Because one of the major factors about effective velocity is understanding that when you get hitters outside that strike zone into the pressure zone, the percentage of damage is dramatically lowered. Just getting them to swing at balls outside the zone is a major, major factor in learning how to become EV effective. All right, so let's look at a couple of these in an overlay fashion. This is fastball up, first pitch. Let's take a look at that one with this curveball and see just how deceptive these two pitches are together. I'm going to put the clock up in the upper right, and you'll see 0.133 seconds is roughly a third of the way. So right there is a third of the way, and these two pitches just now came out of that same tunnel. If we go back just one click, those are exactly on top of each other right there. In fact, the definition of an EV tunnel is the idea that it's in two different planes exactly the same. In other words, it's in the horizontal plane and it's on line with the other pitch, in line with the other pitch, vertically and horizontally. So they literally look like one ball on top of each other. And then they start to split apart as the hitter's making his decision. And again, the fastball is faster than he's ready to hit by a lot. And the curveball is way slower than he's ready to hit. But the key element is that the tunnel lied to him. It gave him a perception that both of those pitches were fastballs down the middle. And neither one of them were. They were both lying to him. And that's the idea of why I invented pitch tunnels in the first place, which was to get hitters to that area which is outside the strike zone because all the production goes down. But instead of doing it like today's guys are doing, trying to get to the edges with all these crazy different looks, yes, you're getting to the edges with all these different freeze pitches, but you're not doing it in the most efficient way. So it becomes obvious when you throw a freeze pitch in here, for example, and then you come back with a backdoor slider. When hitters up their game a little bit and learn how to become closer to black belt from a strategy standpoint, those pitches are going to become much less effective. Right now, they're pretty effective because hitters haven't gotten past that yet. So let's take a look at this other fastball that he makes contact with. And let's kind of compare that to the first one that he misses, this up and kind of up and middle to up and in. And let's see how close they are in being exactly the same. The tunnel is precise because obviously they're going to the same spot. One of them he's a little bit closer to. The other one he misses, he's late. I think it has a little bit better carry, one of them. And I think the other thing is that he makes a little bit better adjustment because it's about the fifth one that he's faced. And it's 2 miles an hour less than the other pitch. The devil is definitely in the details when it comes to effective velocity. Because if you throw 97 up there and you throw 95 up there, or if you throw one that has a little bit more spin, it's going to tend to hold its line a little bit longer. And so every single thing that the ball does has to do with its effective velocity. It affects it. It changes it. It adds to or subtracts from what the radar speed of the pitch is. That's how this works. So now he comes back again and he works this cutter. Now, how close is that cutter to the last pitch that he saw, which is that up and in fastball that he makes contact with? Let's take a look at those two. I haven't seen this combo. See, that's a good tunnel, but it's not a great tunnel. There's a slight little difference, and major league hitters have incredible eyesight, and they pick up things like differentials between one pitch and the next. If there's a half a ball space between them, they're going to recognize that, at least to some degree. But that's a pretty good tunnel. It's not terrible because they're so close to each other that they're almost touching. But the speed differential is not as great, right? Like that cutter up and in the strike zone is a very risky pitch because every time that's in the strike zone, it's about 96, 97, and that's below the speed that guys are ready to hit. So I had a question about this one. I'm wondering if it had the same tunnel as that cutter did. And I think the answer is it's going to be pretty decent. We'll see. Try to get things lined up as well as I can. It's not precise. Sometimes I can spend some time and get it perfect. But if the camera moves even slightly, it tends to be off a little. But you can see that in the beginning of that, really good, outstanding. And then at a third of the way, it starts to split. That's kind of one of the magic moments. But look at the reach differential between those two pitches. That up and in cutter, he's got to go extremely inside to get to. And the other one is on the outside part of the plate, cutting across the edge. And for him to get that, he would have to wait back a long time because the 96 in and the 83 approximately away, huge speed differential. But it also has a huge reach differential. That's another part about this that's a major factor, is when you force guys to have to cover the entire zone, guess what? They're not able to do it. It's physically impossible to cover every inch of the strike zone with one mindset, with a reactionary mindset. So again, why would someone chase that? It's like, that's a terrible pitch, but is it? It's because the initial flight of that pitch looks exactly like where his barrel ends up going, which is a ball that would be down and in. Because that comeback or fastball sinker would start at his hip and then make its way back to the inside corner. And that's where his barrel's heading, is right there. And now he's trying to adjust because he's a good athlete, trying to adjust to the ball as it actually is, but it's too late. And that pitch is safe because even though it's at the wrong speed, it's in an impossible place to keep fair. So therein lies how you start to, based entirely on how risky is it. That one's super risky. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit later in the next few releases. But this one, he has zero chance to hit this. Not that he can't hit that speed, of course he can. But where his mind is at, where he's at in the court, if he's reserving, if he's trying to return a serve, he's in the wrong place to try to return this, and he's coming up short with trying to change his timing. And that's what happens with black belt pitching. They understand where your timing is at, and they can pitch around it. Because that pitch should have been blasted after all of those other pitches, even though that's above the zone. Guys hit that out, fairly routinely when they know it's coming. Why didn't he know it was coming? And the answer is, boom, cutter in, boom, changeup away, boom, curveball straight down, fastball above, and they all look alike. So he goes from 102-ish down to, 82 or 3 on that changeup, 78 to 80 on that curveball. And this thing is at the wrong speed, but it's in off the plate most of the time. So when you have the right ecosystem, it is so hard to hit. Guys have no idea what's about the next step. When pitchers actually learn how to become black belts, it is going to be so difficult to hit because this is the kind of at-bats you're going to have to deal with. The variance of speeds without changing the look of the pitch. Now, if he throws comebacker fastball in here and a loopy slider out there for a strike, guess what? You can hit them both if you're a black belt. You can sit on this and adjust because you see it so early out of the hand, this curveball or slider, that you can actually hit both of those pitches. Right now, it's not done very well because guys are not black belt hitters either. That hasn't started to take place. Hitting is in big trouble when everybody learns what Zack Wheeler has learned from Caleb Cotham. Now, I want to share one more thing. I'm going to go back because this is where things start to get to the point where you're judging whether or not somebody is a black belt. Because a lot of people stumble in and out of stuff. And when I say that, I don't mean that as though it's just blind luck. There's a lot of reasons. Scouting reports, they're following a different scouting report for whatever reason. But by and large, they can have good and bad days with their stuff, with their velocity, although his velocity is pretty good the next time he faced these guys. But look at the exit velocities. I'm going to show you quite a few of these. The exit velocities are high, very high. And they're high because the pitches are, while they may be borderline, a lot of these pitches are right on the diagonal. Pitches that are in this blue area are referred to as twos. Anything on the diagonal or away, middle away, down and away, up and away, all of these locations are twos. Every swing in the big leagues is basically geared towards the speed of a two, the outside fastball version, because you have about, if you react to this pitch in the up and in part of the plate, again, it's over 100 miles an hour, probably 101 to 102 for Zack Wheeler in this up and in area. Down and away, that same 97 is about 92. So you're looking at almost a 10% speed differential between up and in reactions and down and away reactions. So when you get to middle away, that middle away reactionary time is, you're giving them about 7.5% more time to read a middle away pitch than you are an up and in pitch. So wherever you throw this pitch, when you throw it in the middle, and you could have thrown it to the inside, because remember, what it looks like it's going to the middle, and when it actually stays in the middle, it is what the hitter thinks it was. So in other words, it said out of the hand that was a middle fastball, and lo and behold, there it is, middle. And so what happens? He tends to be kind of on time to that. Typically not way on time, but I know that everybody thinks every time the ball's thrown in the middle, it's killed. But again, 51% of those balls thrown in the middle are fouled off and swung on and missed. So there's a very high percentage of those pitches that are just, they're not on time for. So when you see these kinds of pitches like this sinker that's down and in, it's really at the same reactionary time as middle, 100 mile an hour exit velocity, 111, almost 112. And this one was cutter in that up and in area, but it's a strike now. So when you throw the slightly slower pitch, but you throw it in the strike zone, guys are more likely to be on time for it, especially after being schooled just one outing ago. And this one's not exactly a hard hit ball. It's right below it. But again, this pitch is in that area where it's a little bit suspect, meaning if you had to rank all of the plus side of the strike zone, by far the number one is that, number two is here, middle up, and number three is the middle in one. And the reason is because the hitter's hands are above this, and they can still drop the head of the bat and get to this middle in pitch even though they're late. So they tend to do a little bit more damage in that middle in area than they do in the others. 100.6, and again, right on the edge of being a 2. It's 98 miles an hour, so he hasn't lost any velocity. His stuff is still the same, but it's the use of the stuff. This is a splitter right here in the middle, so that means it probably has a little bit of this kind of movement as opposed to the big movement of that fastball. If this were a slider, it would move like that and still be in that same area. That's a possibility. But off-speed pitches in that area are super dangerous because when you throw a slower pitch that's a medium speed pitch in this fast area and a fast pitch in this area, you make them both more like medium speed pitches. So the reactionary times start to come together. And that's why you see so many hard hit balls. And again, this is one or two, I think one outing later after this other outing. So again, 93, not that big a deal. But again, hovering right around the diagonal is number 6, the sinker at 96. Not crushed, but also not a very good effective velocity pitch. Now, maybe it's just his location wasn't as good. Who knows? EV is like gravity. Gravity doesn't care if you understand gravity. If you trip, you fall. And EV doesn't care whether anyone understands how it works or not. But when you throw a 97 pitch in the middle, it's 97. It doesn't matter if you understand that or if you're trying to throw it in the perfect spot and miss. It doesn't really matter. It just matters that it's 97 and it's in the middle. So it's now become a 2. And hitters crush 2s to a very, very high degree. And the exit velocity is the number one way to measure that, other than, homers. But again, when you see these fastballs away, you're going to see a lot more balls hit at this kind of exit velocity. So this is very much not an EV outing, or not a black belt outing. Let's put it that way. They're all EV outings regardless, because again, EV is working all the time. It's just whether or not you have a mastery of it or whether it's random. Because when you don't control it, it becomes random. In other words, when he throws high velocity stuff there, and then he tunnels the softer stuff and the medium stuff away, and he cuts fastballs in on the hands, and he throws curveballs down at the bottom, he can strategically place his speeds as opposed to randomly throwing a pitch here and throwing a pitch there and hoping that the hitter just doesn't make contact because his stuff is so good. And that's why you see guys with amazing stuff getting crushed. And this is an up and away fastball that, again, is at 95 rather than 98, which is we already saw earlier. And it's after 3 more of those pitches that are all faster than this one. So that actual speed, the radar speed, matters because it comes into effect. Now, if that 95 is in here, it's going to be a little less of a big deal. But as it moves towards that 2, that line, it becomes a much bigger deal. So when you start to see great pitchers giving it up, I can promise you they're speeding. They're breaking EV rules. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of time. we have a system for calculating what the risk value is of every at bat and every pitch. And when you see someone like Wheeler in the outing that we went through before, the one where he K'd Merrill 3 times out of 4, and the weak medium pop up to left field, that outing he was just about at par. If you think about it like par, let's just call it 2.5 is par. He was at just about 2.3 with his average sequencing against right-handed batters, and against left-handed batters he was just a little bit over 3. So he was a little bit over par with lefties and under par with righties. So all in all, amazing. And whenever you see that happening, I can promise you what you're going to see is very low hard hit balls and a lot more swings and misses. But again, EV is about one thing: avoiding and eliminating and controlling timing. Get away from 100-100. And the only way you can do that is to understand how 100-100 works and create the most deceptive approach that you can possibly create. So, is Zack Wheeler a black belt? He's got black belt stuff. He's got 10th degree black belt stuff, but he is in and out of black belt sequencing. That outing right there was definitely not. You can attribute that to a lot of things. Is his knowledge at black belt level? Possibly. And so the jury's still out. Well, I'll get back to you.